Turks, Cenk Ugranik Kasparian with you guys. All right, look, are we going to have a fun show today? Sure. Are we also going to have a bit of a disastrous show? Sure, because of the news.
I think we're going to have a lot of fun today, actually.
No, I agree, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. Although there are some significant tragedies, like, by the way, we might go to war with Russia and destroy the whole planet, and the all-American Christmas tree has been burnt down. Was it a hate crime? Okay, all right.
No, I knew it was going to be a multi-day news cycle thing, and it is, but it's just, Fox News is so laughable sometimes, you just have to talk about it.
Oh, no question. Yeah. I mean, look, Tucker's got a new theory on what's going to make you more feminine as a man, and then, hey, should you date a Republican? God, there's so many things.
Yeah.
Let's get to it.
You are the media revolution. You are much needed.
TYT! TYT!
The place is like 95% TYT army.
You guys, the Young Turks, which is my favorite channel, we're getting that message out.
Cenk and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says, you have to listen to the Young Turks.
The people who support us on the internet, that's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think, one side seems to be winning, they seem to have a bigger army, there might be a reason for that. So thank you guys.
Across the map are going to be so tight and so close that it is likely going to be very difficult to call this on election night.
The twin forces behind the Biden candidacy, the billionaires and the Bolsheviks.
Arizona, 19 million. For the vice president, 9 million, a little over 9 million for President Trump.
We are desperate for Donald Trump to not be president anymore because he's fascist and is a threat to our democracy. And we said that from day one. Yes, we want Biden to beat Trump. Is that clear enough?
It is increasingly difficult for the American public to get any sort of truth.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
People still don't know what the word feminist actually means. Not even that. People are still angered by the word.
People think feminist is a bad word, but it's not.
There are gradations, there are different ways. The people who are against gender equality love to use like militant feminists as the representatives of all feminists. It's untrue.
I don't know why you'd be threatened by strong women unless you were an incredibly weak man. If you don't have equal rights, or you're not treated the same way, well, wouldn't you be angry?
Let's start off with some foreign policy. Following a meeting with Russian leader Vladimir Putin, President Joe Biden has issued some pretty serious threats against Russia should it invade Ukraine. Now, following the meeting, he released a statement to the press. Let's hear what he had to say.
Meeting with Putin, I was very straightforward. There were no minced words. It was polite, but I made it very clear. If in fact he invades Ukraine, there will be severe consequences. Severe consequences. Economic consequences like none he's ever seen or ever have been seen in terms of being imposed. He knows his immediate response was he understood that, and I indicated that I knew he would respond, but beyond that, if in fact we would probably also be required to reinforce our presence in NATO countries to reassure particularly those in the Eastern Front. In addition to that, I made it clear that we would provide the defensive capability to the Ukrainians as well.
So what he's referring to there at the very end of the clip is additional defensive capability, because as you guys probably already know, the Congress has already allocated a significant amount of funding for the military in Ukraine. Now, what is this all in response to? Well, it's based on the intelligence gathering indicating that Russia is basically getting troops ready for a possible invasion. US intelligence has found the Kremlin is planning a multi-front offensive as soon as early next year involving up to 175,000 troops, according to US officials and an intelligence document obtained by the Washington Post. According to reporters, almost half half of the 175,000, according to reporters, almost half of the 175,000 are already deployed on the Russia-Ukraine border. And so as a result, there's a lot of tough talk coming from, yes, Biden, but also his foreign policy advisor, his national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, who said something, in my opinion, a little alarming during his press conference following that meeting with Biden and Putin. Let's watch.
Things we did not do in 2014, we are prepared to do now. Now, in terms of the specifics, we would prefer to communicate that directly to the Russians, to not negotiate in public, to not telegraph our punches, but we are laying out for the Russians in some detail the types of measures that we have in mind.
So when he says that the Biden administration is willing to do things that were not done in 2014, what does that mean exactly? Now, we already know that sanctions were implemented, in the Trump administration. He's referring to the Obama administration's actions following the annexation of Crimea. And I don't know exactly what he's referring to there. He's being vague and he refuses to negotiate publicly. So in other words, why hold a press conference if you're not going to be specific about what the game plan is for the Biden administration? Besides which, I think it's okay to ask, why does the United States need to use resources toward this potential conflict when in reality we have our own issues at home, but also we need to find a diplomatic approach to that issue because we have this looming problem of climate change, and I don't really understand how the antagonism is going to make the situation any better. You get what I'm saying?
I do. But I have a different take on it. So one, I know how the antagonism could make it better, but if you're doing it ahead of time, like they are doing it now, I actually don't criticize anything Biden's been saying on this issue or his administration, because you want to dissuade them from taking military action. After they've already taken military action, then we only have a disastrous set of options. Okay, there are no good options after that. But I am 100% in favor of all the tough talk beforehand to try to basically let them know, hey, look, don't do it. Otherwise, there's going to be big problems here. Because guys, it's not just about Ukraine. Although Ukraine is a giant country for Russia to take over. So that would already by itself be massively problematic, right? But if you let them take all of Ukraine, that basically means we're back to a world where everybody invades one another and grabs land. It's bedlam, it's chaos, and I know a lot of you won't believe it. And it's, oh yeah, what's the big deal? I mean, so Russia took a part of Ukraine and a part of Georgia, and now they're going to take all of Ukraine. And look, Poland, it's not Germany, it's a middle ground. Maybe they take it, right? And so, but there's a lot of ethnic Russians in Poland. No, that's a disaster. No matter what we do. Okay, because I know that there's people now in this country who are like, oh, we're the most evil thing on the planet and it's all our fault no matter what happens. Okay. I'm not talking about us right now. I'm talking about what Russia's doing. And what Russia, if lining up 175,000 troops on the border is a terrible development, okay? And Vladimir Putin is, anyone who trusts him is obviously the dumbest person on earth. I bet he has good intentions towards Ukraine, or I bet Russia should have Ukraine. I bet countries, semi-dictators like Putin should just take whichever country they like with force. And I hate our imperialism. I love his imperialism. That makes no sense at all. Okay, so now in terms of what we do, that is an incredibly difficult question. One I think is easy. Given the size of the massive violation of international law in this case, if they cross the border and actually try to take the country, obviously you freeze all Russian assets all across the world. I don't care who it is, every oligarch, anything related to Putin, seize. Now again, there'll be some idiots not idiots, to be fair, they're grifters, and I don't know who they're working for, some portion of them, but they'll pretend, people pretending to be on the left, okay, and maybe a couple of people who actually are on the left and are, don't understand world politics at all, who are like, oh my God, freezing the assets of oligarchs. That's so warlike. Him taking Ukraine with 175,000 troops is not warlike, but freezing their assets is? Are you insane? right? So, and what about the people of Ukraine? Do they count? Are they human beings? As a progressive, do you care about them? Do you care about their freedom? Do you care about their rights, right? So now once you get beyond freezing the assets, that's when it gets impossible.
Right.
Because what are you gonna do, start a war with Russia? That's beyond a disaster. On the other hand, what are you gonna do? Let them take one country after another, after another, after another? If you don't stop them in Ukraine, and I don't, again, other than freezing assets, I don't know how you stop them.
Right.
But if you don't stop them there, then this world is in a lot of trouble. Because I guarantee you, very soon after, China takes Taiwan. Because it's open season.
Yeah, you make a lot of good points. What stands out to me in regard to sanctions is, I mean, there's different ways to implement sanctions, right? And I like the idea of targeted sanctions rather than sanctions that would really be incredibly brutal to the people of Russia.
Yeah.
So for instance, here is, in my opinion, a pretty nuclear option. And so when Jake Sullivan is using that tough talk, but it remains vague about what he means, I'm not necessarily concerned about US troops on the ground in Russia. I'm concerned about them possibly implementing this option. So the the New York Times seems to think that there isn't going to be a military invasion. They write that with direct military intervention essentially off the table, Biden administration officials have listed a series of options that include financially punishing Putin's closest friends, which I'm in favor of, and supporters, blocking the conversion of rubles into dollars, and pressuring Germany to block a new gas pipeline between Russia and Northern Europe from opening. Now that middle option, right? The conversion of rubles to dollars, that could have an insanely negative impact on the people of Russia. I'll give you more details on that in just a second. In regard to sanctions or pressure toward European allies to halt any type of economic activity with Russia, including the transfer of fossil fuels, that's going to be difficult, especially with a country like Germany that's kind of struggling right now. So for instance, work on that pipeline called the Nord Stream 2 has been completed, but it is waiting for approval from Germany's energy regulator before it can begin operating. Any request from Washington would coincide with a leadership change in Berlin. The new chancellor, Olaf Scholz, and his cabinet were sworn into office on Wednesday. Now, he has not yet made any definitive statements on that pipeline. Gas reserves are unusually low in Europe right now, and there are worries about shortages and soaring prices as winter approaches. So that pressure, to again stop economic activity between our European allies and Russia might be a difficult sell for the Biden administration. And so, I want to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, that's where I would get quote unquote super tough, right?
Well, it's Biden.
Yeah, and so I know, right? Yeah. But this is a rare situation. There's only two situations where Biden is quote unquote tough, right? One is when you're talking about any kind of war situation. He voted for the Iraq war, and he thinks you remember, he's old school. He thinks I have to appease Republicans. So tough on drugs, tough on people who committed minor crimes, people that are powerless. He can be tough there. Tough against progressives, yes, right? Tough in these situations, yes, right? Tough when it actually comes to delivering for American voters, no chance, 0% chance, right? Tough against Republicans, negative 0% chance. There's no way he would ever do that, right? So, but this different context definitely matters. So here, guys, look, I don't want you to mistake what I'm saying. I wouldn't, when I say, no holds barred, I don't mean you go after random average Russians and, if they happen to have a bank account, although the average Russian doesn't have many bank accounts outside of Russia. But I'm not talking about that, obviously. I'm certainly not talking about Russian Americans. They're 100% American. That's never in question. But don't cry me a river about Russian billionaires and their assets being frozen. And then now getting tougher, I actually like these options that they have. So, because the thing you want to avoid at all costs is the military option. So, anything short of that is positive. Rubles to dollars, blocking that is super tough. That actually does affect the average Russian.
Yes.
And so that one's on the border, but
I haven't even given you the worst option yet.
Okay, but on blocking the pipeline, I would do anything and everything. If Russia crosses the border into Ukraine and it's an actual invasion, I would tell the Germans, we're going to put every tariff there is. Our relationships with you is going to be the same as Russia if you don't block that pipeline. We will end every economic situation we have with you guys, and we'll punish you economically as much as possible. We're not gonna let you build a pipeline with guys who are taking over Europe. That is obviously appeasement, and it will not be tolerated as long as it's on economic grounds.
So in terms of sanctions, right, obviously the worst option would be a military intervention. We are not in favor of that. But the most extreme option in regard to sanctions is this. So it's a measure that would be to cut off Russia from the system of international payments known as SWIFT that moves money around the world, as was done to Iran. And by the way, that has been brutal to the people of Iran, and I'm not in any way in favor of it. In 2019, the Russian prime minister at the time, Dmitry Medvedev, labeled such a threat as tantamount to a declaration of war.
You know what's tantamount to a declaration of war? Lining up 175,000 troops on a border. That's not just tantamount, that's like minutes away from doing it. Look, guys, there is one scenario here where the Russians are doing something understandable, okay? That's where they line these guys up because it's a giant threat, obviously. And then they go, we'll walk them back if you guarantee that Ukraine will not be in NATO.
Thank you for mentioning that, because that's a huge part of the story I was going to get to next. And so Russia argues that the behavior of the United States and its NATO allies have been provocative, working to make Ukraine a NATO country in Russia's mind is provocative. And so it's a little bit of a he said, she said type situation, or he said type situation, where the United States is arguing, hey, lining up your military at the Russian-Ukrainian border is incredibly provocative, and Russia's responding back and saying, well, your behavior with NATO is provocative.
Yeah, it is slightly provocative, the way we keep expanding NATO right up to their borders. Is it worth Russia actually going to war? No, but at the same time, if they're threatening it just so that we guarantee that Ukraine does not join NATO, well, I get it. That's a foreign policy maneuver. No one in Washington would say that. They would say, oh, that's outrageous. We hate them. They have no right to anything. We have a right to everything, right? No, I don't agree with that. That is, in some ways, American imperialism. I think the expansion of NATO is a complicated issue, and it definitely has some upsides, and obviously it has drawbacks. But if Russia's using this as a negotiation ploy, and they actually back down after they get some diplomatic goal that they were going for, at the end of the day, that's no big deal, if you ask me, right? Yeah. And any kind of tough talk, if they reach a deal like that, then tough talk about how we should still punish Russia doesn't make any sense at all, right? As long as everybody keeps it diplomatic. Yeah. But the minute that we allow countries to take other countries, it's gonna be an absolute disaster. And anyone who tells you otherwise, like, oh, what's the big deal about Ukraine? Well, they're not. Well, let's put it this way. That is definitely not a progressive position to say, who cares about an entire country? Right. We should let another country basically take them over and impose a dictator to rule them. That is as far away from a progressive position as you could imagine. The fact that it's the Russians and not Americans doing it does not make it any better at all. It doesn't make it 1% better.
Right. I think, and look, I get the hesitation with the United States getting involved, because the United States, historically speaking, does not get involved to make matters better. And so again, I get that hesitation. But overall, I agree with your assessment there. It would be a disaster if Russia did that.
And you know when the US is lying, or at least we know. Like, so when the US is like, oh my God, Venezuela and Iran are the two countries that are the most dangerous, also have tons of oil, or in the top 5 oil producing countries, right? And but there's like 90 dictators in the world, but those 2 are the ones we are most concerned about, right? But the US does not, like, US likes to start conflicts with countries they think they can decimate, right? Not with other countries that have nukes and would start a cataclysmic war. Even the US is not that crazy.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get off of that international policy and talk a little bit about how the Senate voted to nix Joe Biden's vaccine mandate. We'll come right back.
I've been at TYT, I believe, for the last 6 years.
5 years.
3 years now. 7 years.
4 years now.
2.5 years. I just started because she got me into it.
My boyfriend actually watches it every morning and every night, so I kind of just started watching it with him, and I love it. I mean, it's the only way that I find my news.
Looking through YouTube, looking for political shows that look cool.
I came across a very angry rant from Cenk, and that's when I knew.
So I was immediately in love with the show.
And then I haven't missed a live show since then.
10 times a day, I watched the show in the morning.
Whenever I had a bad day at high school, Young Turks.
Man, Cenk is just so blunt and honest, and I love the honesty, and there's no BS behind the news, and they just tell everything like it is.
There's nobody censoring him. There's nobody there to say, you can't do this, you can't say that.
That feel of authenticity makes it seem like what they're saying is true.
I feel like I get the real story from the Young Turks.
I am TYT.
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 Breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. This is Brett Ehrlich with Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. Bernie Sanders wants to break Wall Street, and he wants to break it real bad.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. All right, a lot more stories. Casper.
Many members of the Democratic Party are the worst. And there's a new story proving that. It involves the Senate voting to nix Joe Biden's incredibly weak vaccine mandates that pertain to businesses with 100 employees or more. Now, the Republicans used something known as the Congressional Review Act to successfully pass this resolution with a simple majority. So they did not need 60 votes as they typically do in the Senate due to the legislative filibuster. Now, senators voted 52 to 48 on the resolution, which needed a simple majority to be approved. Democratic Senators John Tester of Montana and Joe Manchin of West Virginia voted with Republicans, giving it enough support to be sent to the House. Now, is this likely to pass in the House? No, it is not likely, but it's not impossible. So the resolution faces an uphill path in the House where Republicans aren't able to use a similar fast track process to force a vote over the objections of Democratic leadership. Instead, Republicans are hoping to get a simple majority needed to force a vote through a discharge petition, which will require support from a handful of House Democrats. But even if they're able to pull that off, just understand that the Biden administration, Joe Biden, is going to veto it. He's going to veto it because it's his mandate. But there's also the added pressure from the courts. Some courts have unfortunately already decided or ruled that there are flaws in this mandate. For instance, there is the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals that wanted to implement a stay on the vaccine mandate because they want to review it and deal with its alleged flaws. But at the end of the day, our system is so broken that even though we're now seeing another surge in coronavirus deaths, not just cases, deaths, there are all these obstacles in place in our legislative and judicial system to prevent something as common sense as a vaccine mandate.
Yes, so look, here's one way of looking at it. Imagine that the coronavirus was even more contagious and more deadly. So like when they couldn't stop the Spanish flu back in the day, the plague, and it's wiping out a third of America, right? It's you go into a room with folks, you're gonna get it if they have it, right? And it kills even more people. I give you that to you as a kind of an extreme example to see, is there any boundary at which Republicans wouldn't say, freedom, man? Well, okay, but if we're in the same room together and you don't have protective mask, you're definitely gonna make me sick and maybe get me killed. What if it had affected kids instead of older people? Like, would everybody be okay with, oh yeah, the other side doesn't mind killing your kids, right? Exposing your kids to these things. Is there any, what's your sense? Is there any extreme where they wouldn't say freedom?
No. I do not think that there's any possible change in this coronavirus pandemic that would persuade the Republican Party to ignore their vested interests to do the right thing for the American people. It doesn't matter if it would specifically impact children. If children were dying as a result of this, I am convinced that the Republican Party still would not care. Because what they're more concerned about than anything else is keeping businesses open and ensuring that their, stock portfolios continue to get insane gains. Like that's all they care about, period.
Yeah, and the voters have been brainwashed, the Republican voters, into thinking that anything that helps big business is freedom.
No, but you know what? I disagree with that, because when you live under the American capitalistic system that refuses to make people whole as shutdowns happen, I don't blame voters or ordinary citizens for being against lockdowns, because they're left to fend for themselves while the government gives them the middle finger. So I understand where they're coming from. The problem is, on the right, we have individuals who don't care how many people die. They want to keep everything open. They don't want to follow any guidelines. They don't want any shutdowns. Okay. And then on the left, let's say they get what they want. And when I say left, I'm obviously talking about the establishment Democratic Party in this context. Yeah, we're gonna shut everything down, but if you're lucky, we might send you a $1,200 check every 3 or 4 months, maybe.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but overall, the Democrats are trying to actually get this thing under control, and they did pass a number of bills with decent relief, right? The Republicans passed bills when Trump was in charge that mainly helped giant corporations. When Biden came in, that COVID relief bill, and we tell you when his bills suck, right? And if you watch this at all, you know that. In fact, we get tons of heat for how much we rip into Biden's fake attempts at getting relief. But in the COVID relief bill, it was mainly to help the average American. So, but I guess, for the irrational and the brainwash, there's nothing you could say. And they don't like big business either, to back up what Anna's saying. And they've been crushed by big business, so they have to do an end run around it. In that past, they would say, oh, well, big business is America, and that's why you should support them. And Republican voters used to go, yay, big business. Now they don't do that anymore. So now they say, this show, you're not helping big business, you're helping freedom, okay? And if you were a real man, you wouldn't take any precautions. You'd go right back to work and make sure that you expose yourself and your family to danger. And that works. That propaganda works. But put them aside for now. For the rest of us that live in the sane world, is there a number? Is there a disease bad enough, then contagious enough, where we would say, yeah, of course it should be mandated, whether it's through big business or through government? My answer is, of course. Then you ask the next question, is this bad enough? 780,000 dead. How bad does it have to be? I mean, if I told you ahead of time there's gonna be a worldwide pandemic, it's gonna kill 5 million people. Or if I told you it's gonna kill 1 million people worldwide, and in America we're gonna have the equivalent of, 100 9/11s, you'd be like, whoa, okay, yes, fine, we should have mandates, etc., right? And now it turns out, no, it's way worse than that. And still Republicans say, nope, no mandates, no precautions. I don't give a damn about the health of the rest of you guys. I'm for freedom in the mind that big business sent me into.
So there was a story yesterday involving a woman. I don't know how her car ended up near Niagara Falls, but it was submerged in water. This woman is obviously in clear danger. Her car is near Niagara Falls. And it was this huge story, right? And rescue workers managed to get this woman who was in her 60s out of the vehicle. They saved her from the vehicle, but unfortunately she later died in the hospital. And as that story was unfolding, now of course I want this woman to be saved, but I was just thinking to myself, everyone's eyes are locked on the TV screen right now, paying attention to what's happening. But in the background, you have more Americans contracting this virus, more Americans dying as a result of the intentional misinformation that's been spread through the media about the vaccine and about social distancing and all of that. And everyone's just kind of desensitized to it at this point, right? And look, and then there's the fatigue angle to it as well. It's been nearly 2 years. Our lives have not been normal for nearly 2 years, and we keep hearing about new variants. I can't help but roll my eyes when I hear new variants. Not that I don't take it seriously, but I'm fed up. I'm sick of it, right?
Yeah, we're all sick of it. I'm sick of the mask. I'm sick of all of it, right? So I get that frustration 100%. But I wanted to address one other thing that one of our viewers brought up. Theater Goddess says, wow, so I guess it is possible to get things through the Senate when you actually want to get something done. And so I'm glad you caught that, because this passed with only 52 votes. What happened to everything getting filibustered, right? But we looked into it. I know it's frustrating, but the one thing Republicans wanted to win on and had Democratic votes on is not subject to a filibuster. It's not that Democrats didn't want to filibuster it, which that's the first thing I thought too. I can't believe that after getting everything filibustered, they didn't do it back to the Republicans. But in this case, as frustrating as it is, they cannot filibuster this.
But remember, Democrats still have a slim majority in the Senate. And so I give you that because we should talk about Manchin and Tester. What was their reasoning for wanting to nix Biden's weak, and yes, I'm gonna repeat it, weak vaccine mandate for businesses? Manchin argued in a statement that the federal government should incentivize, not penalize, private employers whose responsibility it is to protect their employees from COVID-19. By the way, private businesses love the vaccine mandate because they are not protected from liability if their employees get sick with COVID or hospitalized from COVID. Also, it impacts productivity if their workers are sick or out because of this virus. So it's fascinating how he has latched onto the right-wing framing of this issue to make it appear as though like businesses don't want it. This is tyranny. It's just stupid. It's stupid. It's a stupid talking point. In regard to Tester, he added this week that he's not crazy about mandates. He's not crazy about mandates. Okay, sweet. Now, why do I say that the mandate is weak? It only applies to companies that have 100 employees or more. And there's a loophole. The loophole is if employees don't want to get vaccinated, they just have to submit to regular testing. Wow. And of course, there's exceptions if you have a medical condition that prevents you from getting vaccinated, or if you have a religious belief that prevents you from getting vaccinated. It's a weak mandate. But they act as if you have like Joe Biden breathing down your neck all day, every day, making decisions about every movement you make in your personal life. And that's just not the case.
Yeah, guys, so now they say, okay, I don't want the vaccine and I don't even want to be tested. So if I'm highly contagious, I want to make sure I can spread it to you guys, because I don't care about you and I don't care about your health. I don't care about your life. I don't care about your family. The only thing that matters is me. So the conservative movement in this country has just become the most selfish, entitled, bratty, spoiled movement that just does not care about anyone else. That is its defining feature, complete lack of empathy.
Now let's go to the last graphic here, because I want to show you the United States and where we are with this pandemic compared to the UK. And remember, the Prime Minister of the UK is not a progressive, member of the Tory party, Boris Johnson, okay? I give you that context because, as you can see from the graph, we have a pretty significant spike in coronavirus deaths. The UK is kind of like, it's flatlined. You're not seeing a similar spike with the UK, but in response to the Omicron variant, Boris Johnson just ordered a new round of lockdowns. Gatherings of 2 people or more are banned. Law enforcement will be enforcing this lockdown, which indicates that the only time people should leave their homes is if they're gonna go grocery shopping or if they're gonna go work out by themselves.
That's
outdoors.
An actual lockdown.
It's amazing. I honestly, when that headline broke yesterday, last night, I was shocked by it.
Because there is no conservative principle that we should endanger everyone around us. So it's unique to America because of conservative media. And so conservative media made up a conservative principle of you shouldn't care about anybody else's health, and if you have a disease, you should spread it as far and wide as you can. So even conservatives in other countries are much more stringent than Democrats in this country. Like, so the right winger in the UK makes Biden look like a massive right winger, right? And here in America, they're like, oh, the liberal Biden. Oh, now I guess if you know, he won't let us, take a contagious disease and shove it in your face. What a outrageous form of government tyranny. The right wing in this country, driven by conservative media, has lost their minds. No other conservatives in other parts of the world agree with that. Now, look, you can find random people, and you can find small percentages, but as national movements in other developed nations, this kind of lunacy does not exist. They don't even understand us. They're like, you let your kids get murdered in schools because of guns. You spread coronavirus everywhere. America theoretically was the most developed country. You had the worst case of coronavirus in the whole world. Not a developing country, not a poor country. The richest nation on earth did the very worst job in dealing with this pandemic. What the hell is wrong with you guys? And the answer is media. Guys, people like Fox News and Donald Trump drove 30% of this country to lose their minds.
All right, let's take our second break. Let's just do it, because this next story involving Lindsey Graham has a lot of dunking involved, and I don't want to be rushed. I want to take my time. So let's take the break. We'll be right back.
Old school to me from Jank. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben.
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, sir, would you like to rethink that? And I go, what are you talking about?
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps f***ing cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
If you're looking for a heart attack, the short way, baby.
Wrong. I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times. Yuck. But what makes you stop right before 40? What makes you say, nah, man, I ain't doing that no more. I'm cool.
And I called you back on the air. And I was like, okay, Kevin Smith, big shot. What the f***? You said you'd come on and you didn't come on. I'm sure I took that very well. Yeah, you did. You called me back the next day and said, I thought it was 7 a.m. There's now deep fake porn. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
I heard of it. I just had some in the car.
I'll tell you who I'm not f***ing, Ben Mankiewicz. Have you guys ever felt that?
Not ever.
And now it's just the three of us. This is the intimate hour.
By the way, the last half hour of this, we're not even rolling.
Fair enough.
Hey, man.
Easily.
See, I watch movies.
I'm done with both of you.
Once Greg starts laughing, I can't stop. And I was just gonna ask you about getting high. Snoogans, Snoochie Boochies.
And members, of course, you can get the whole damn thing. TYT.com, join, and free trial. I'm old school with the old folks.
Good
John, come back.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. News.
All right. The debt ceiling debacle continues, this time with Senator Lindsey Graham threatening Republican senators who might help in increasing the debt ceiling and actually work along with Democrats to make that happen. Now, this is also in response to Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader, who has apparently struck some sort of deal with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer so that Democrats will be able to, pass this debt ceiling legislation or raise this debt ceiling. Now, Lindsey Graham is like, look, guys, we can't do it because our daddy Trump is gonna give us a spanking and we just can't have it. That's really what's going on right now. That's how pathetic Lindsey Graham and the rest of the Republican caucuses. So in blunt remarks to the Senate Republican Conference, Graham harshly criticized McConnell. He said McConnell had backed away from his vow earlier this year to not give Democrats any help in raising the debt limit. Now, let me just be clear. If they don't raise the debt limit, everything falls apart in the economy, okay? The markets crash immediately. The very markets that, these Republican lawmakers are heavily invested in, they're gonna raise the debt ceiling. It's gonna happen. That's my prediction. Obviously, I don't know for sure, but you can quote me on it because it's gonna happen. It would be disastrous if they fail to raise the debt limit. Now, one GOP senator said Graham specifically warned colleagues that the president is going to be engaged on this issue. And when he says president, I think they're referring to Trump here. He told colleagues that McConnell had led them on a charge up a hill, and now they were getting shot in the back, according to the senator.
Yeah, what's funny is that Trump is the one shooting them in the back, and Lindsey Graham is blaming Mitch McConnell, not Trump. He's like, why did you lead us up the hill? Because it exposes us to getting shot in the back by Trump. So since he's shooting us in the back, we should do whatever he says. Lindsey Graham is the definition of weakness. No one has ever been more spineless in American politics. He's a jellyfish. And so,
I mean, I want Josh Hawley to address the lack of masculinity when it comes to Senator Lindsey Graham. I mean, they're constantly obsessed with masculinity, right?
Yeah.
What is this weakness, this lack of strength that they pretend to be so much in favor of? Donald Trump isn't even president, but he's got a firm grip like around their necks. It's so pathetic.
Yeah, it's funny from the Stand Your Ground party. He's like, oh, he's shooting us from the back. Run, don't fight back. Don't surrender to Trump. So look, this is an interesting civil war. At the end of the day, if the Republicans ever don't raise the debt ceiling, that means the donors have lost control of the Republican Party, and that's a fascinating phenomenon. But that means they've gone insane populist. I mean, obviously you see a giant faction already doing that, but what I'm telling you is things are not what they appear in, especially if you're watching mainstream media or reading them. Mm-hmm. So in my whole lifetime, this whole not raising the debt ceiling has always been a fraud. Mm-hmm. There's never any question about it because the donors control both the Republican and Democratic Party nearly 100%, and it would affect their stock portfolios. And they're not clowns, so they might be bad guys, but they're not clowns. And so if 99% of the world's economists say yes, it would definitely send the US economy and probably the global economy into an immediate meltdown. They're not interested in losing all their money.
Right.
So now, if the Republicans actually get to a point where Trump has beaten all the donors, but leads them off a cliff. Like, I love beating the donors, but not if you're driving off a cliff, right? But if they drive off a cliff, that means that's it. They will do anything, no matter how irrational.
Right.
And so, at this point, I don't think the donors have lost full control.
No.
But Lindsey Graham, at the same time, is also an animal of the donors, right? And he's a kept boy, and so for him, within the caucus, to say no, we should be full-blown idiots, defy the donors, and drive off the cliff. That's a troubling phenomenon.
This is my take on this whole debacle, this whole story, okay? So Trump releases a statement in response to Mitch McConnell striking some sort of deal with Chuck Schumer in order to raise the debt limit. And Trump's statement is this. He says, Mitch McConnell just folded on the debt ceiling. A total victory for the Democrats. Didn't use it to kill the $5 trillion real number. Build Back Worse bill. By the way, that bill it's going nowhere. What $5 trillion? What are you talking about? They passed a bipartisan infrastructure bill to the tune of $1.75 trillion, right?
No, yeah.
1.75 trillion for the bipartisan infrastructure bill. The Build Back Better agenda hasn't passed.
No, yes, it's definitely trillion. 1.75 is Build Back Better. So when he says a real number, it's not. Of course, it's not a real number.
Yes.
The other one when you take out all the parts, the one that actually did pass, when you take out all the parts that were already old funding from COVID relief bills, it's only about 550 billion. So $500 billion that Trump is claiming is $5 trillion. So that's normal Trump lies.
Right, and he says Build Back Worse bill that will essentially change the fabric of our country forever.
Yeah.
They want to make you drink Starbucks every single day from now until forever. Anyway, all the hyperbole from Republicans is hilarious. But then he follows the statement with, the old crow is a disaster. Obviously speaking about Mitch McConnell. So my theory is Lindsey Graham is terrified of Trump. I think that he really does believe that Trump will probably be in power again sometime in the near future. And so he's doing his due diligence to make daddy happy, right? He's speaking out against McConnell, knowing full well that McConnell will be dismissive of Lindsey Graham. But it is having an effect because apparently Republican senators who are gonna go along with what McConnell is doing are now kind of backing off. Before I get to those statements, I do want to show you how McConnell is responding to this controversy.
For Washington Democrats, 2021 will have one major theme: ramming through inflationary spending on a partisan basis that hurts American families and actually helps China. The whole country understands that Democrats own this mess. They have seized one-party control of the economy, so you better believe that they'll have one-party accountability for the resulting nightmare. Democrats have wanted to transform the country alone. They want to print and borrow trillion after trillion on their own. They want to create even more inflation on their own. So as Republicans have made clear for months, they will have to own a debt ceiling increase as well. This week, the House and Senate have reached a bipartisan agreement to make that happen. Democrats will get one shot at this. They won't be able to add any other amendments, and every single Senate Democrat will have to put their name to the gigantic dollar amount of debt they're prepared to pile on the American people.
So this is Mitch McConnell's way of selling it to Republicans, because the argument here is, well, this is going to be disastrous for the Democratic Party. And he also, of course, notes that now there's a bipartisan path forward, but that bipartisan path might be in jeopardy now because of Donald Trump's threats. One lawmaker who spoke anonymously to The Hill said somebody needs to get to Donald Trump and tell him to shut up about this. Again, said one nervous Republican lawmaker, who added that Graham's warning about Trump is having a chilling effect. Graham was warning us about what Trump was going to do, and may God have mercy on your souls, the lawmaker said. They're so afraid of Trump, it's amazing. It's amazing.
God, we need a populist in this country so badly to look out for the average person and not the donors and big businesses. And instead, we got a populist madman who says, hey, why don't we just drive the country off a cliff and see what happens? And because he doesn't care about us. He wants the country to be in shambles when Biden is president so he could re-win the presidency.
He loves chaos.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's so obvious. If you told Trump right now, hey, you could press a button that destroys the American economy, costs 20 million jobs, and all of the different disasters that happen, but you get back into power, he'd be like, where's the question? Of course I'll destroy America to get back in power. And so now his spineless lackeys like Graham are doing it. All right, but guys, this is important. The messaging, so Republicans say, okay, Democrats own all this debt, et cetera, et cetera. And the Democrats in return say nothing, as always. Just lay down flat and get steamrolled, right? Why isn't there fiery speech after fiery speech about, hey, Republicans, you're the ones who raised the debt ceiling when you gave $2 trillion to the wealthy under Trump. Why'd you raise the debt ceiling? Why'd you raise the debt ceiling? Mitch McConnell's a liar. He loves raising the debt ceiling. Lindsey Graham's a liar. No, nothing. Deaf, mute, and dumb for sure. So Democrats never fight back. Now to the media. Look, there's many articles, of course, I read about this, but half of them, and the one on The Hill in particular, said. So I'll focus on this one because I don't want to speak to all the articles, but most of the articles miss 75% of the relevant facts. Okay, so what are the relevant facts here? Number one, this is not about new spending. This is about paying for old spending, by the way, the majority of which was done under Donald Trump. But if you don't clarify that in your article, everybody thinks, oh, the Democrats are now spending trillions of dollars and that's why they're raising the debt ceiling. No, that's different. You want to criticize them for the bills, that's fine, right? That's a political issue. But the debt ceiling doesn't have anything to do with that. It's paying old bills. You have to clarify that in every article. If you don't, then you have completely misled your readers. Then they don't clarify at all in a great majority of the articles that the Republicans raise the debt ceiling every time there's a Republican president. Well, God, that gives you the context of they're massive hypocrites and they're playing with your lives and your jobs for their own political gain. If you don't write that, you haven't really given people the real story. And this article in particular didn't even mention that it would be an economic apocalypse if the Republicans do this. So it made it seem like a 50-50 issue. Oh, totally. Are the Republicans right or the Democrats right? Is it too much spending? And finally, of course, this one they'll never, ever, ever do because the corporate media is corrupt. But you should talk about what we just told you, which is the real people, the real dynamic here, and it's an interesting one, by the way, super interesting, is between the donors and Trump and the populist wing of the Republican Party. And both sides, in my opinion, are terrible people, right? But you don't have to say that as a reporter. But you do have to explain to the readers that Trump is going not against Mitch McConnell, but against most of the Republican donors. That's a more interesting story, and in some ways gives Trump more credit for being more populist and against donors who everybody hates, right? But they don't do any of that context. And so God help people who are getting their news from mainstream media, because they're honestly, it's just awful. You can't actually tell what's happening in the country at all if that's all you're reading.
Yeah, because a debt ceiling story, let's just keep it real. I mean, snooze fest, like who cares, like who sees a headline about the debt ceiling? It's like, ooh, I can't wait to read about that. But the debt ceiling, once you understand the impact of not raising it, how it would totally crash the economy, potentially the global economy, yeah, it's an important issue. It's like they go out of their way to frame it in a way that like repels people. Anyway.
Yeah, look, I'll say one last thing about that. Look, if you don't raise the debt ceiling, one of the reasons the economy crashes is because then people no longer have full faith and credit in the United States dollar. And what that does is it greatly increases the interest rate that we are all charged as Americans, including most importantly, the US government, okay? So what that does is it actually massively adds to the deficit. It does not reduce the deficit. So it's deeply ironic and very fiscally irresponsible. I have seen that explained in about 2% of the articles. It's an absolute fact. You could read it online, you could find it. All of the economists agree that that's what it would do. But if you read a mainstream media article or you watch cable news, you would think Republicans are the ones that are being fiscally responsible and the Democrats are being fiscally irresponsible, when in reality, it's the exact opposite in this situation.
All right, let's go to our next story.
You are the media revolution. You are much needed.
TYT! TYT!
The place is like 95% TYT on.
You guys, the Young Turks, which is my favorite channel, we're getting that message out.
Tank and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says, you have to listen to the Young Turks.
All the people who support us on the internet, that's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think one side seems to be winning, they seem to have a bigger army. There might be a reason for that. So thank you guys.
Across the map are going to be so tight and so close that it is likely going to be very difficult to call this on election night.
The twin forces behind the Biden candidacy, the billionaires and the Bolsheviks.
Arizona, 19 million. For the vice president, 9 million, a little over 9 million for President Trump.
We are desperate for Donald Trump to not be president anymore because he's fascist and is a threat to our democracy. And we said that from day one. Yes, we want Biden to beat Trump. Is that clear enough?
It is increasingly difficult for the American public to get any sort of truth.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
People still don't know what the word feminist actually means. Not even that, people are still angered by the word.
People think feminist is a bad word, but it's not.
There are gradations, there are different waves. The people who are against gender equality love to use like militant feminists as the representatives of all feminists. It's untrue.
I don't know why you'd be threatened by strong women unless you were an incredibly weak man. If you don't have equal rights, or you're not treated the same way, well, wouldn't you be angry?
Hillary Clinton has read the victory speech that she had shelved after losing the 2016 election. Now, she did this for something known as masterclass, but the real question is, why? The real answer is she's making money teaching a master class. So this is a service that has all sorts of celebrities and public figures teaching various classes that you can pay for. So I guess she's teaching some sort of class or offering a master class. And as part of it, I guess to kind of like sweeten the deal and get a little bit of publicity, she's reading this shelved speech. This is the speech. Had I won, what would I have said? And so we do have some excerpts and everything for you, but before we get to the excerpts, here's a cool promotional video she put out on social media.
This was what I intended to say if I had been elected in 2016. My fellow Americans, today you sent a message to the whole world.
I can't, I can't, come on, just be a normal person. First of all, don't read your victory speech that you shelled because you didn't win the election. Don't do that, it's a bad idea. But also just be why can't she just be a real person? I think it's from being in Washington for so long, she was programmed to not be a real person, and now she doesn't know how to be a real person.
Yeah.
No one does that, no one. It's just not real.
Yeah, every part of it's not real. The shot at her desk was even less real. Oh, are you here? Yeah, we're all here because you are doing a master class and you're on camera. Anyways, so look, why is she doing it? One, obviously for the money. The master class pays apparently $1 gazillion to the people who present it. Okay,
I'll teach a class.
There she is.
I'll teach you anything you want.
Yeah, oh yeah, well, sure. But Anna, that goes to my point.
Yeah.
We need the money, right? Last I heard, and this was many years ago, so it's probably a higher number now, but the Clintons have about $150 million. What do you need extra money for? You can't spend all that money right now. Go have fun, go on a yacht, go jetting around the world. We don't care, it's okay. You're not in public life anymore. Do whatever the hell you want, right? No, you're gonna make more money. And guys, I don't get it, man. It's a little bit humiliating, right? Because I know the ostensible reason. They say it's a masterclass on resilience. But it opens you up, obviously, and right wing's doing it all over the internet, and I don't blame them in this case. And by the way, a lot of progressives are doing it too, masterclass on losing.
No, a masterclass on losing?
No, it's the ostensible reason that they're giving to the public is on resilience. Right? But even that is well, why do you need to be resilient? Because you had one of the most epic losses in history. Why are you, doubling down on that and bringing more attention to it for extra money? And the other second thing is,
point.
Yeah, she wanted to read that speech so bad, and she wanted to get it off her chest, and she didn't have an excuse for it. That's my guess as to the second reason why she's doing this. And look, I read the parts about her mom. And I actually think they were moving, and I can get into that in a second.
We have video.
Yeah, so she was dying to say it, right?
Yeah, and look, all your points are fine, but the strongest point is the one about how you're doing great. Financially, you're doing great. You don't need the money. Why open yourself up to more criticism, like the criticism you're getting now? In regard to such a like devastating loss, right? In that context as well. Like, it's just not worth it. Like, I don't think that you could put a dollar amount, if I were in her shoes, that would convince me to do what she just did. But she wanted to do it. Okay, you're doing it. So you opened yourself up to what you're experiencing now. Willie Geist actually asked her why she decided to revisit this speech. She's not going to give the real answer, which is money, money, money. But she does also give you some context into what the speech is about. So let's watch.
What compelled you to sit down and revisit that speech?
Well, I wanted to be as helpful as I could to the viewers and to the process of being in a master class. So I worked on a speech that really was about my journey and had a real emphasis on my mother's life and journey as a way of, making it clear that, yes, I would be the first woman president, but I like everybody, stood on the shoulders and lived the lives and experiences of those who came before us.
So that's the reasoning she gave. I think that context is important so you understand who she's referring to in the excerpt that we pulled. So this is a short part of the speech. This is what is part of the video that you'll get if you're, in this master class. And understand she's referring to her mother here. So let's watch.
I dream of going up to her and sitting down next to her, taking her in my arms and saying, "Look at me. Listen to me. You will survive. You will have a good family of your own and 3 children. And as hard as it might be to imagine, your daughter will grow up and become the President of the United States."
Now that is powerful.
Yeah.
I like that JR included that last part of the anchors.
So powerful. Okay, but it's also depressing because apparently you didn't live in a country where you could grow up to be the first female president. So she's being depressing on behalf of all of us. And so I didn't consent to that. Anyways, look, I want to give you context on what she was saying about her mom, because her mom apparently was given away by her grandmother.
By her parents to the grandparents.
Yes, and so she's on a train with her younger sister in that story. Hillary Clinton's mom is when she's a little kid, and she tells the story about the things she didn't know. And apparently when she got to her grandparents' house, Hillary Clinton's mom, she was greatly abused and had a really, really tough life. And so that's why she's emotional there, saying, I wanted to go tell that younger version of my mom, it's gonna be okay. You're gonna one day have a daughter that becomes the first female president. I mean, who could have believed that, right? So it is a moving story, and I believe her that she was emotionally, racked by that story. But since you didn't win, it doesn't make sense. Throughout her entire victory speech, she's like, and the forces of division and hatred did not win, and we are a country that is united and fought back. But I'm like, every part of this is things that didn't happen. So now you're emphasizing, no, we are a country that is divided. We are a country that chose hatred over love, and that stuff that's true, right? And partly she wants to be a victim, partly she wants to get all the attention, and partly the masterclass is like, put that in there so everybody's talking about it, and we'll get more PR and attention out of this.
Yes.
So the whole thing is to make money at the end, and it's a little gross.
But again, if this is a class on resilience, I don't see how this marketing ploy is persuasive I don't watch that, a speech that she would have given had she won, and think to myself, no, I feel like this is really gonna help me be more resilient. I don't know, maybe other people disagree. Maybe you guys feel resilient watching this, but I just wish she would let it go. I know that's like a tough thing to say, a harsh thing to say, but we're almost at 2022, right? Like, just let it go.
Or, by the way, go the complete opposite direction, because to be fair to her, I don't know that I could ever let it go. And I thought Hillary Clinton was the wrong candidate. I was positive in the primaries that she was a worse candidate, and we were right. And so every time we say that, by the way, everyone in the establishment hates us. That's nails on a chalkboard for them. No, no, she would have won, could have won. She was a better candidate. It's obviously not true. She lost, and she lost to an idiot. Let's be honest. But on the night of the election, after all was said and done, and I heaped tons of criticism on the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton for losing to a monster and subjecting us to that monster for 4 years and now beyond it. But at the end, the last comment I made was, as a person, it's heartbreaking that she was going to be the first female president. It was a historic moment, and then she lost to a misogynist. I mean, it doesn't get any worse for that in that regard. So I get that was emotionally devastating, and I wouldn't want anybody to go through that. And my reaction would be completely different. I'd go over the top in the opposite direction. And from that day to the rest of my life, I would fight Trump and the Republicans. I would fight them in every imaginable way. I spend probably my whole $150 million fighting them. I would do whatever it takes instead of going like, oh, okay, now let me improve my reputation and have the entire establishment kiss my ass for a victory speech when I lost. Right?
Yeah.
And make tons of money, probably millions of dollars doing this masterclass. And that's the only time I'm gonna fight, which isn't really fighting. That's only for your own benefit. How about the rest of us that had to suffer under Trump? What did you do for us? Nothing.
I'm just gonna recommend a book. Jonathan Allen, title is Shattered. Very in-depth look at her campaign in 2016. A lot went wrong. And she is not without fault. So anyway,
she's massively at fault.
Exactly.
Anyway. That's what she should do the masterclass on: how to lose to an idiot. And look, that's harsh, and I don't want it to be harsh because let it. Yeah, I'm happy to let it go. Let's move forward. But no one in the establishment has learned a lesson.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. All right, that does it for our first hour. We got to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about conservatives who feel sad and lonely because Democrats don't want to date them. It's a real poll, people. We'll give you the details when we come back.
Patience. It's a virtue. They think you can put me in a box. But you can't stifle a revolution. Cenk Uygur, you started something, an idea. The truth and honesty matter above all else. And the people love you for it. And for a while, so did I. We could have stood united, a political force of reckoning upon our foes, the hypocrites, the phonies, the unjust. But you put me in this box.
Cenk! No!
You began without me. You began without me. But God as my witness, I will be the one to finish it.
They did 100 squats a day for 30 days straight. I was like, how hard can that be? That doesn't sound very hard. So I'm gonna try to do this for 30 days and see if there's any difference in my physique.
3 weeks later.
Steve, how is your exercise regimen coming along with your squats?
No, I did 100, 100, 100, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
You're pacing yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
When news is breaking, and when you need Brett Ehrlich, it's time. When news breaks, when news is breaking, and you like. When news is breaking, and you need Brett Ehrlich, it's time for Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. This is Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich.
Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, William Larson, and Carrie Schwartz with you guys. Because William and Carrie just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. I know a lot of you watch us in other places. That's why God created tyt.com/join, so you could join that way and still be American heroes. But Carrie and William, thank you and welcome aboard. Thank you for putting on this show. All right, Anna.
All right, one quick correction. So in the previous hour, I mentioned that Boris Johnson ordered a lockdown in response to the Omicron variant. So it's not a lockdown. People are being told to work from home if they can, but it's not as extreme as it was obviously the beginning of the pandemic when police were, he told people that police were gonna enforce a lockdown. People weren't able to get together with others. So it's a half lockdown, but I want to make sure that I give that correction. But it's definitely more than what our lawmakers are doing here in the United States, unfortunately. And I'm not a fan of Boris Johnson. Just want to make that clear as well.
Okay, yes.
All right, let's move on.
But no, by the way, we do have to clarify things that seem simple, like,
yeah,
hey, we think Vladimir Putin taking over Ukraine is a bad idea, but that doesn't mean we are in favor of American imperialism. Or do we support a coup in Venezuela?
Yeah, no.
You know, because people make absurd comments, so you have to clarify for no reason.
Yeah, so thank you to everyone who wrote in and gave me some clarity on what's actually being implemented in the UK. I really appreciate that. All right, with that said, let's make fun of conservatives. So, some Republican voters are absolutely devastated by a new poll that indicates that most young Democrats or most young people who identify as Democrats are not interested in dating or befriending conservatives. Now, this is a study of 850 college students, and it found that 71%, let's take a look at this graph, 71% of Democrats would not go on a date with someone who voted for Donald Trump. Just 31% of Republicans surveyed said they would not go on a date with a Biden supporter. So there's a significant difference here, right? It also found that 4 out of 10 Democrats would not shop at or support a business of Trump voters. Just 7% of Republicans felt the same way about Biden voters. And 3 in 10 Biden voters would not work for someone who voted for Trump. Just 7% of Trump voters felt the same way about Biden supporting or Biden voting bosses. So there's a significant difference. I'm actually personally a little surprised at the difference between Democratic voters and Republican voters here, because I would honestly think that Republicans would feel the same way. But apparently they don't, according to this one poll. And
I can explain why.
Yeah, so go ahead, explain why, and then I'll.
So not all of it can be explained easily, but the dating part can. And I know this because I'm a former Republican. And so that means I had other Republican friends and I know how Republicans think. So if you told a Republican, hey, do you want to date a Democratic girl? They'd be like, yeah, right? You know, do I have to explain further? And so because that's the mindset, like, oh, that'd be great if I had sex with a Democratic girl, haha, right? Because like if you're a person that you think like dating's not about haha, it's about do I get along with you, you might not even get how they're thinking, right? And then for Republican women, they think Democratic guys are usually kind-hearted and good people, right? They know that, right?
Are they?
So that's why I think Republicans think dating a Democrat sounds pretty good, right? But for Democrats, dating a Republican, you're against gay people and black people and Muslims and you name it. Why would I want to date you? I'm not interested in dating monsters. And so I want to get their hurt feelings in a second, but yes.
So look, I think that dating is a special category. So I'm only talking about myself here, and however anyone else would vote or feel is their business. But for me, dating, you're having a like an intimate relationship with someone. We're not just talking about banging. We're talking about dating. Like dating requires like spending time with each other, quality time with each other. And for me personally, I would have a little bit of difficulty dating a Trump supporter, mostly because of what Trump represents. And I'm not just talking about policies, although his policies were pretty awful, just tax cuts for the rich, and that's pretty much it. But what he represents in terms of how you treat people, just like the lack of decency toward individuals who are different or diverse, like that would bother me to no end. And I don't think I would be able to have a romantic relationship with someone as a result of that. But I think befriending someone who might have voted for Trump, I have done that, and I definitely can do that. And I'm gonna change their minds.
Okay, well.
That's the way that I see it, right? And look, there are friends, and then there are like friends like my friend Lauren, who I would trust my life with Lauren. If we're talking about everyday friends, like, hey, what's up? Let's grab a coffee or whatever. I think I could be a friend to a Trump supporter. And my take is, I want to believe that most people are good. And I genuinely do think that we're all kind of like siloed off. We're all in our filter bubbles. And I'm convinced that a significant portion of Trump supporters are not exposed to the truth or to reality. And I think that it actually hurts us when we cut them off and, just say, we're done with them. We're not gonna have any conversations with them. I think that there is power in persuasion. I think there's power in friendship. And I think that we need to get better at just trying to have conversations. Like, if you're not comfortable with it, you don't wanna do it, I'm totally fine with that, I'm not judging. But I'm trying to be a little more open-minded in having conversations with people I disagree with the hope that I'm proven right that most people are good people and they can be persuaded to the good side.
Okay, so I'm gonna be way harsher than you, but I'm also, this is a very rare issue where I'm indecisive. So, and you've seen me struggle with it on air countless times. And normally I'm not shy about being decisive. So look, number one, first let me make fun of them. And let me draw my lines. So you want to work with someone who's Republican? Yeah, what are you gonna do? You're gonna ask everybody their politics? No, that one I don't care about at all. And would you shop at a place that's owned by a Republican? Yeah, I don't care.
Spoiler alert, you already do.
Yeah, you do, of course you do. And do you shop at a place owned by a Democrat? Of course you do, right? So no, that's micromanaging your life in a way that's like stressful. No, that's unrealistic. So everybody has their own lines, that's my line, right? I don't mind those. Dating, totally out of the question. Totally, not even close. Not like you went into a spiel about like, well, you're gonna spend a lot of quality time. Well, I don't want to spend any time, let alone quality time. Like, guys, think about it, okay? A lot of Republicans think that gay people should have less human rights than everybody else. No, that you're a monster. I'm not interested. Oh, really? Let's have an interesting conversation about how much you hate gay people. No, let's not have that conversation. I don't find it interesting. A lot of Republicans think, do black lives really matter? Now, they wouldn't frame it that way, but they would say, oh, the millions of black people who say cops are abusing them, they're all liars. I don't believe them, I believe the cops. No, not interested in having a conversation with you, let alone dating you. Hell no. And guys, so I can give you 1,000 other examples, but let's get personal here, right? So my family's Muslim, I'm atheist now, but we immigrated from Turkey, a Muslim country. And forget what Trump did when he was in office. He tried a harsher Muslim ban. I don't want to get into that nonsense debate. But when he was on the campaign trail, and this is actually more relevant, he very, very clearly said he wants a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the country. That was very well publicized. Most Republicans definitely heard that and definitely loved that and then voted for him after that. So I'm supposed to date a girl who thinks I should have been banned from the country? I mean, other than the irony, then I wouldn't be on this date. If you got your way and I was banned, right? You're obviously hateful. And I don't find it like any better that you're hateful against Muslims, because in America there's a sense of like, yeah, but it's okay to hate Muslims. No, my mom's Muslim. It's not okay to hate Muslims. Okay, so, and then Anna, when I said something along these lines online, I partly do it to get the right-wing reaction because I'm curious about it.
Yeah,
okay, and so a lot of the reactions were like, oh, now you're judging people from far away. Wait, you thought it was okay to ban me from the country, but now you're worried about me judging you? No, you were judging us and trying to ban us. Don't tell me about, you know why? Because they're incredibly selfish. So they think banning you completely is awesome. You hurt my feelings. That is not awesome, is what I say to that. And one last thing about that, and then we can discuss back and forth, Anna. Then good, well-meaning, Democrats, progressives say, now, Cenk, remember, 2 wrongs don't make a right. No. If the Nazis say, hey, I'd like to put the Jews in concentration camps, and you say, well, I'm not gonna date any Nazis. Hey, two wrongs don't make a right. Okay, don't judge the Nazis. No, I will judge them. I will judge them. I will not date them. Oh, you can't call Republicans Nazis because they were just trying to ban Muslims, not Jews.
Yeah, like, okay, so your mind, and I think rightly, goes to the extreme Trump supporters, his like core base.
No, they all heard it and they all voted for it.
No, I get it. Yes, they did. It's true. But I also think about the fact that the state of Florida went to Obama in 2008 and 2012.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so I give you that example because the Republican Party specifically relies on hatred and xenophobia to do their campaigning, especially at times of economic anxiety, okay? And I think that strategy unfortunately works, especially when there's like a vacuum in regard to like the Democratic Party and what they represent. They should be the appropriate response to that, and they have failed to do so. So I think that there are people who ended up voting for Trump who aren't, I don't think that they're a lost cause. And I don't know, maybe I'm being super naive, and I'm typically the one on this show who's the most pessimistic, the most neurotic, and the most against having any faith in anything. So, but look, I'm not having sex with them. Like, that's where I draw the line. I'm not interested. I like, it's too hard for me to find that kind of intimacy, and I think we're on the same page there. My whole point is, in terms of conversing, in terms of like having open dialogue, in terms of like being open to a potential friendship, I don't want to shut that possibility out, because at some point we need to find a strategy that mitigates the very intentional division that's sown in this country by conservatives, like conservative lawmakers.
So that's where I'm indecisive, and you make great points. So, but let me just say one last thing about the dating and the sex part. Look, I knew Republican men. I'm telling you right now, if you're a woman on the left and a Republican man sleeps with you, there's a 99% chance he's gonna go tell his friends, ha, I got her.
Yeah, women on the left aren't sleeping with conservatives.
Yeah, and so when the Republican men are like, 71% don't wanna date us, boo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Cry me a river, man.
Yeah.
Okay, after you were vicious to everyone else, all of a sudden your feelings are hurt. I don't care about your feelings at all. Okay, now on the other hand, should you be friends with them? That's the part that's hard, guys. Look, we'll do two different polls. We'll put these up on YouTube, okay? Would you date a Republican and would you be friends with a Republican? The friends one is hard because I can't be a close friend. I don't have any close friends anymore that are Republicans. Because how am I gonna have a conversation with them where they're like, what do you think? Should we ban the Muslims or the Jews? Which one? How do I have a conversation? No, black people deserved it, right? No, how do I have a conversation with you, right? On the other hand, it's a matter of fact. Anna's right. A lot of them voted for Obama. Obama won Indiana. Okay, so they're not irredeemable, but that well has been poisoned by conservative media and Trump.
And we took our ball and went home. Let's keep it real. That's my issue. And I want to fight back against it. And look, a lot of people might disagree on that, right? A lot of people might think like, no, Anna, you're wrong. We should cut them off. Okay, but then you have to accept that if we do that, then the division that we're already experiencing will continue to deepen and the country will tear itself apart. And I'm tired of that. I want to find a better way, a different way, even knowing that my proposal here is gonna be pretty difficult for me to even carry out, right? Like, you think I'm like looking forward to having those conversations? I'm not, but there's gotta be a better way than just cutting people off and considering them a lost cause. Again, that's just gonna continue deepening this division. And I just think we're right. And I think we can be persuasive, and I think we can win.
Then I'll end on this, guys. So, and by the way, Obama had I think around an 80% popularity, it might even been 83% when he first came into office in 2008. And that's in 2008 elections when he won Indiana. So that means that there a huge portion of conservatives are not irredeemable. Like there is a way to reach them, right? So I get that and I want to do that. And you'll see me every once in a while and say, hey, can we work with you guys on economic issues? Don't you want higher salaries? Don't you want health care for your family? So we need to work with the Republicans on some issues, and most especially on corruption. That's why I keep going back and forth. But Republicans, if you're listening to this, can you get it through your head that when you say to huge portions of us, we don't like you, we hate you, we want to own the libs, we don't want you to have the same rights as us, etc., that might be a terrible thing to say, and that you can't then say, oh, I caught feelings because you said 1% of what I normally say to you. Like, it's got to go both ways. Democrats can't be fools and reach out like, oh, okay. Like as a person from a Muslim background, I'm not going to ask them pretty please to accept me as a human being.
You plant seeds though.
Yeah, well, I planted a seed after I kicked the living crap out of them.
Okay, don't be friends. Like just, you're not gonna help in the way that I'm hoping.
But I just need, look, if you're a right winger, I know these days you because of the media bubble you're in, you've been taught irrationality and you think being irrational is awesome. But how can you not understand if you say, hey, I want to ban you, I think you're so despicable based on who you are that you can't even change. I hate you so much, I want you banned from the country. And then go, oh, well, you don't like me? I'm offended by that. Can you really be that irrational that you would think that I'm the bad guy and that you're the good guy? Oh, just because I wanted to ban your existence, now I'm the bad guy? Yes, that makes you a bad guy. That's the definition of a bad guy. When you pick someone based on their race, religion, etc., and say, I hate you. So it's got to go both ways. If you don't come any way towards our direction, I'm not going to right wing and asking them or pleading with them to not hate me.
The war on Christmas when we come back.
You know, old school's pitched to me from Jank. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben.
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, sir, would you like to rethink that? And I go, what are you talking about?
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps f***ing cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
If you're looking for a heart attack, the short way, baby.
Wrong, I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times.
Yuck. But what makes you stop right before 40? You know, what makes you say, nah, man, I ain't doing that no more. I'm cool.
And I called you back on the air. And I was like, okay, Kevin Smith, big shot. What the f***? You said you'd come on and you didn't come on.
I'm sure I took that very well.
Yeah, you did. You called me back the next day and said, I thought it was 7 a.m. There's now deep fake porn. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
Heard of it? I just had some in the car.
I'll tell you who I'm not f***ing, Ben Mankiewicz. Have you guys ever felt that?
Not ever.
And now it's just the three of us.
This is the intimate hour.
By the way, the last half hour of this, we're not even rolling.
Fair enough.
Kingsley.
See, I watch movies.
I'm done with both of you.
Once Greg starts laughing, I can't stop. And I was just gonna ask you about getting high.
Snoogans, Snoochie Boochies.
And members, of course, you can get the whole damn thing. TYT.com, join, and free trial. I'm old school with the old folks.
Good
John,
night.
come back.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Look, all of you that wrote in on YouTube Super Chat, thank you. Thank you for the donations. Thank you for the comments. They're all brilliant. I wish I had more time to read them. I'm just gonna read one. Shadows wrote in on our member section. I know a couple that purposely did not talk politics at first, only to split up a month later when they finally did. Explain at the beginning what your values are is my thought, they say.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, if you hide it, it's gonna come out anyway. And then it's a lot of times winds up being a disaster.
Right.
All right, Anna.
All right. Fox News, of course, is now engaged in a multi-day news cycle focused on the Christmas tree that was set ablaze right in front of their Fox News studios in Manhattan. And Fox and Friends trying to figure out how to deal with it. At first, they're like, oh, is it the left wing? And now they've decided to kind of latch onto this narrative about criminal justice reform and how that has led to this Christmas tree debacle. Let's watch.
Treason. Grinch sets fire to Fox's Yule display, and he is freed without bail despite a long rap sheet. And we know more about that guy right there, 49-year-old Craig Tamahana. After he was arraigned yesterday, he said, I didn't do it. He denied the arson, then he hurled obscenities at the reporters before asking the reporters, hey, does anybody have a cigarette?
Video of him doing this exists, and yet no judge could find a way to keep this guy locked up. It's unbelievable.
He wasn't eligible for the bail under these new liberal reform laws.
That's right.
But the judge could have found a way to keep him locked up if he felt as though he was a threat to society. Note to judge, he's a threat to society.
There's a lot to unpack here. And by the way, Kilmeade later did float the possibility of a hate crime, and that angle is fascinating. We'll get to that in a second. But okay, as you learn more about the suspect, this is a person who is suffering from severe mental health issues. It's abundantly clear based on the other run-ins he's had with the authorities. And we have a cocktail for disaster, not just in New York, but in, yes, liberal states like California as well, where you have neoliberal Democrats who are like, yeah, we want to appease some of our voters, so we're gonna do no cash bail and we're gonna let nonviolent offenders out of prison, but we're not gonna provide any support. We're gonna set them up to fail. And so what ends up happening is you have people suffering from mental health issues, as this gentleman is and continues to. And since they have mental health issues, I don't know why he lit the tree on fire, but he needs treatment, he needs care, he needs housing. That's not being provided. You can't just do like step one and then just let people fend for themselves. It creates a disastrous situation, right? So, and by the way, it creates a great talking point for right-wing goons like the people you're hearing on Fox and Friends right now.
Yeah, so look, there's two parts of it. Is it a serious crime? Yes, it's definitely a serious crime. And so if you said, hey, he might be a danger to people because he's setting things on fire in the middle of a crowded city, I would be very open to that point of view. Now, at the same time, clearly the guy has mental health issues. This has nothing to do with politics according to the authorities. We'll get to that in a second. Well, then what do you want to do? Do we think prison's a good place? Because I think always shoe on the other foot.
No, prison is not a good place. Let me be clear about that. Yeah, he needs treatment. He needs services. Putting him in prison makes the situation worse for him.
Yeah, so the example I was going to give was the one, my house was broken into many years ago. We talked about it on the show. And it was a guy who was obviously having issues. And in his case, it appeared to be addiction issues. So the stuffing him into a prison because we got scared that night and I was worried about my family. Does that make it better? No, he's not going to get the help that he needs, and he's going to get, it's only going to make prison's only going to make it worse. And when he gets out, he's likely to do it to someone else because we didn't help him, we hurt him. And I know that like when it happens to you, it's visceral and you want to protect your loved ones, etc. But we're asking people to be productive instead of counterproductive. You're not going to be shocked to find out that Fox News is not going in that direction.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not in any way agreeing with anything Fox News is saying, but I do think that what we've seen, I guess in New York as well, we're experiencing it in California, is this policy of just letting people fend for themselves, like doing the very beginning of what could be positive policy, right? Really rethinking our criminal justice system. But then allowing people who are suffering from mental health issues or from drug addiction issues or from homelessness to just struggle on the streets. And so people will deal with, let's say someone is mentally ill and as a result lights things on fire or might physically assault people. This very same guy apparently exposed his genitals to female reporters right before the Ghislaine Maxwell hearing. As the trial was happening, it was right outside the court. And look, it's not fair to anyone, right? Like, I don't want to see that. Those reporters didn't want to see that, but I don't want to throw this guy in prison because he is mentally ill and needs services. So there's just failure all around when it comes to our lawmakers, and I'm so fed up with it. And then, of course, you have people like Fox and Friends exploit the situation to make it a political talking point about how Democrats are too light on crime. No, this isn't about meeting this guy with more criminal charges. This is about really assessing the situation for what it is. An individual who's out on the streets, who has untreated mental health issues. In fact, his own father, like, I read this comment from his father and I was disgusted by it. His father's like, oh, he's a nut. He's a total nut. I can't do anything about it.
Yeah, well, why don't you try to get him help? I mean, Jesus Christ. So look, guys, it doesn't mean you just let him go and go, oh, no problem, go back on the street and light something else on fire.
Yeah.
That it's you have to obviously contain him because he's a danger to himself and to others, but do that in a medical setting instead of a prison setting. Again, Fox is not going in that direction.
Are you a politician with a ridiculous point to make? Are you in need of a petulant, outdated way to make it? Then you'll need one of my signs. Hi, I'm Simon Simonson of Simonson Signs. We'll take the stupid, over-the-top, meaningless allegory you have and put it on foam core. So maybe someone will notice your grandstanding, because this is C-SPAN, and anything that's not people milling around in front of a running vote count is almost considered moderately entertaining. The bar is low, just like our prices. We've got plenty of designs. We also brought you Mike Lee's Tauntauns. They're tons of fun. What does this have to do with the Green New Deal? About as much as this other visual aid he used of Reagan on a T-Rex. Or is that a Velociraptor? Who cares? Who the cares? No one gives a call us now at Simon Simonson Signs. We'll make your stupid point stupidly for money today.
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
Now, Brian Kilmeade really wants this to be a hate crime, even though the cops have already said this is not politically motivated. So let's hear his argument.
Here's the thing, in New York, under the new liberal policies of bail reform, arson is only a felony. You can only be held if it's a felony if the suspect tries to harm a person or commits a hate crime. And apparently lighting a Christmas tree on fire is not a hate crime.
But it is. Even though a lot of people could have been injured?
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Who says it's not a hate crime against us, against Fox News?
Here's what we do know. According to the New York Post, which is co-owned with us, that Christmas tree was $500,000.
I know.
So this guy torches $500,000 worth of property, and he gets to walk? I mean, we've been talking out in California about
$1 million total eventually.
Sure, out in California, we've been talking about, well, you can steal up to $1,000 worth of stuff, and you won't wind up in jail. Here, apparently, you can torch $500,000 worth of property and you walk. He's out and about this morning.
He has mental health issues, and that tree is not worth $500,000.
It doesn't matter how much.
I don't care at all. And by the way, I just don't believe him. I'm just making that point. But I want to go back to, because we've already adjudicated. We've talked about the criminal justice reform aspect of it. I want to go to the next video because there's something going on with Ducey and Kilmeade. Okay, and this is in regard to the allegations of a potential hate crime.
Who says it's not a hate crime against us, against Fox News?
Here's the thing. What we do know for sure, and we don't know the guy's motivation.
But the judge could ask and be under suspicion and keep him locked up.
Well, he might have. But here's what we do know.
I'm seeing more and more interactions like that where Kilmeade, does the typical Fox News thing. He like lies about something COVID related, or he proposes that this is really a hate crime. And Ducey is like, no, it's not. That's not what's happening. Anyway, let's move on. Like just immediately dismissing him and wanting to move on. It's kind of amazing.
Look, the thing is, the minute I saw that a Christmas tree was lit on fire by Fox, I thought it might be an attack against Fox. So it's not a crazy thing to think, right? But now we know by the time they were on the air, that's why Ducey's trying to shut him down. They already knew the guy has mental health issues, and it was not at all political, and it wasn't directed at Fox. And so that's why Kilmeade saying it might be a hate crime against us. It's absurd.
It's ridiculous.
Absurd. By the way, if they say arson is not a felony, that's also absurd. Of course, arson is a felony. And so the point of saying you don't need bail on misdemeanors is that they're not physical or very serious crimes.
They're not putting other people
in danger.
Right.
That's why you say, hey, if you don't have $100 for bail, I'm not going to keep you in jail for jaywalking, right? But we're not talking about arson. Arson is a very serious crime. So, and by the way, they're outraged that, oh my God, he didn't even get any, he's not even in prison. Guys, I did this story a couple of days ago of a right-winger that planted bombs under a bridge where he thought Black Lives Matter protesters were gonna be in Pittsburgh. It was adjudicated, he was found guilty and got no prison time. That's a terrorist who tried to murder people with bombs, because since he was a white right-winger, they're like, oh, you're free to go. They gave him 6 months house arrest. Did you see Fox News losing it over that? That's a terrorist! How could they let him go? What kind of liberal reform is this? No, when it's conservatives who get to walk, even if they're terrorists, they're thrilled with it. They don't care at all. But when it comes to their house, all of a sudden, oh my God, do you see what's happening with the injustice?
All right, we gotta take a break. When we come back, we'll tell you how a new study has shown that Viagra might help lower your risk of Alzheimer's.
Patience. It's a virtue. They think you can put me in a box. But you can't stifle a revolution. Cenk Uygur, you started something, an idea. that truth and honesty matter above all else. And the people love you for it, and for a while, so did I. We could have stood united, a political force of reckoning upon our foes, the hypocrites, the phonies, the unjust. But you put me in this box.
Jake! No!
You began without me. You began without me. But God as my witness, I will be the one to finish it.
They did 100 squats a day for 30 days straight. I was like, how hard can that be? That doesn't sound very hard. So I'm gonna try to do this for 30 days and see if there's any difference in my physique.
3 weeks later. Steve, how is your exercise regimen coming along with your squats?
No, I did 100, 100, 100, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
You're pacing
Zero
yourself.
cents, yeah.
Right.
When news is breaking, and when you need Brett Ehrlich, it's time. When news breaks, when news is breaking, and you like. When news is breaking, and you need Brett Ehrlich, it's time for Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. This is Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. More news.
Fascinating study that was written about in Medical News Today, and it has to do with a drug that could potentially and significantly lower your risk of Alzheimer's. Now, this is a limited study, let's be clear about that, and it found correlation, not causation, but the findings are still fascinating, and it finds that Viagra might be the drug that could lower your risk for Alzheimer's. Now, let's also be clear that the data only applies to men because men take Viagra. So this study found this specific effect in regard to men. To predict which existing drugs would provide new treatments for Alzheimer's, the researchers used a computational model that incorporates data about the disease's genetics and the involved networks of metabolic pathways. Now, taking into account other considerations such as promising results from experiments in animal models of Alzheimer's, Viagra emerged as the most promising candidate. Okay, and what did they find? Well, they found that when they analyzed insurance claims for prescriptions, they found that sildenafil, which is Viagra, prescriptions were associated with a 69% reduced risk of Alzheimer's in claimants.
Wow.
Right on the nose.
Is that where it is? Is it on the nose? Is that where it is? Okay. So I have fun theories about this. First of all, this is a trick by the pharmaceutical companies. Don't buy into it. I take ivermectin instead.
He's kidding, just in case.
Okay, yes. For the prescribed reason for Viagra and the Alzheimer's, ivermectin. No, all right. So yes, obviously kidding. At first I had the theory, it was a fun theory, that it wasn't the Viagra, it's that they were having more sex. And so they were like, I feel pretty good. And they're active in the world and that helped their Alzheimer's, but
no,
it turns out that's not it.
That is not it. It has something to do with proteins. Not those proteins, other proteins, which I'll give you the deets about right now. So to confirm that Viagra can affect the underlying mechanism of Alzheimer's, the researchers tested the drug in a lab on nerve cells that came from individuals with the disease. They found that sildenafil, again, Viagra, promoted the growth of new nerve projections and decreased the accumulation of a protein associated with Alzheimer's in the cells. It's really fascinating stuff. But again, I want to again reiterate that this is something that's entirely prescribed to men. So based on the data set that they're dealing with, this is really only applying to men and needs to be studied more, not only to include women, but also to see if they can find causation, right?
I don't know why my mind is going in this direction, but Donald Trump, if he got a hold of this news, because he remember the disinfectant thing? You know, you take that and you inject it into the body, okay? And he's like, maybe we could find a way to do that and you inject it into the mind. But now in all seriousness, guys, this actually could be great news. And so if they can, it doesn't have to be Viagra. What they could do is they could figure out what's activating, and that's obviously what they're in the middle of doing now. And it doesn't have to be just for men. If you find that the actual part of Viagra, not necessarily the entire thing, but the part of Viagra that is causing that effect, and it's real, then you can give just that to men or women. Okay, and it might help a lot with Alzheimer's, which would be a fantastic breakthrough.
It would, but I mean, don't you have an erection for like 4 hours straight when you take Viagra? Like they got to do something about that side effect, right?
Do they?
Yeah, I think they do. I mean, who wants to walk around with a stiffy for 4 hours?
No.
I mean, and look, if they do find that Viagra works, that's great, and it's important to prevent Alzheimer's. But
you're like, well, good news, bad news. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, your head's going to be much better off. Now the other head.
Okay, but and by the way, I'm exaggerating. I don't know if it's for 4 hours.
I don't know either.
But you still have to deal with that situation for some period of time.
I don't know at all. No, seriously, I haven't taken it. I'm relatively young, so I don't know how long it lasts, etc. You don't have, the erection does not have to come with it, okay?
With Viagra?
No, I'm saying with the proteins. I don't know if they can isolate it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, if
make
they
it
can,
a different medicine.
They would have to.
I would imagine. I don't know, but But
or
if
else you're gonna have a bunch of men running around saying that it's the pattern on the pants, it's the pleats, you know?
Okay, Bart. But on the sound effects. But listen, if they said to me, hey, you might get Alzheimer's, but the treatment is Viagra, what am I gonna do?
I jump in it. All right, we have one other fun story before we end the main show today. Let's talk about what's taken place in Finland.
You know, old school's pitched to me from Cenk. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben.
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, sir, would you like to rethink that? And I go, what are you talking about?
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
If you're looking for a heart attack, the short way, baby.
Wrong. I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times.
Yuck. But what makes you stop right before 40? You know, what makes you say, nah, man, I ain't doing that no more. I'm cool.
And I called you back on the air. And I was like, okay, Kevin Smith, big shot. What the you said you'd come on and you didn't come on.
I'm sure I took that very well.
Yeah, you did. You called me back the next day and said, I thought it was 7 a.m. There's now deep fake porn. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
Heard of it? I just had some in the car.
I'll tell you who I'm not f***ing, Ben Mankiewicz. Have you guys ever felt that?
Not ever.
And now it's just the three of us.
This is the intimate hour.
By the way, the last half hour of this, we're not even rolling.
Fair enough.
Kingsley.
See, I watch movies.
I'm done with both of you.
Once Greg starts laughing, I can't stop. And I was just gonna ask you about getting high.
Snoogans, Snoochie Boochies.
And members, of course, you can get the whole damn thing. TYT.com, join, and free trial. I'm old school with the old folks.
Good
John,
man.
come back.
The woman next to me is the Prime Minister of Finland. She's 36 years old, and she is now considered a baddie because she went clubbing all night during the coronavirus pandemic. First of all, she's 36 years old. Like, let that sink in for all the Americans who have Joe Biden as their leader. But anyway, this is what happened. So Marin, the prime minister here, 36 years old, is being called out for a lapse of judgment after she failed to return home from the bar on Saturday night upon learning that Foreign Minister Pekka Haavisto had tested positive for COVID. The two had actually been in close proximity just a day earlier. And so she was initially told that she didn't need to quarantine, that she didn't need to isolate because she had been fully vaccinated, but later missed a text message that advised her to do so. So these are her advisors. The thing is, they had apparently text messaged her on her work phone, which she left home when she was clubbing it up. Okay. I don't think that she intentionally did something wrong. They had communicated with her earlier and told her that she didn't need to isolate, and then they tried to communicate with her later, and she missed the message. Now, again, the text telling her to quarantine was sent to her work phone, which she didn't take to the club. When she saw the text, she quickly got a COVID test and luckily tested negative, and then she tested herself again for a second time, also tested negative. At first, Marin defended her actions, arguing that she had followed the advice of her Secretary of State, who informed her about the COVID exposure. But in a Facebook post on Monday, she said she should have double-checked the guidance and used better judgment. I'm very sorry for not understanding that I needed to do that, she wrote. So she has apologized for it. And in terms of the guidelines, I think that's also an important component of the story. What's happening in Finland, especially since other countries are very different from here, the United States. The guidelines do advise people to voluntarily avoid social contact if they're waiting to access a COVID test. Separate guidelines for government ministers and employees also recommended limiting social contact immediately after exposure, according to a Finnish newspaper.
Okay, I have two things to say in the beginning here. First of all, let her go! Let her go! We're gonna do a poll on this, tyt.com/polls. Curious what you think. It's actually, there are good points on both sides, which we'll get to in a second. The second thing I have to say is, look, to be fair to her, why did she leave her work phone behind? Because she was finished with it.
She was finished with work. She was going to the club. Listen, I'm happy that she's taking it seriously, and I know, yes. I don't give you your due diligence. I'm sorry.
Okay,
that was
it's
great.
okay. I got love from Craig.
It was a great joke.
I'm good.
Craig, now you're making me look bad.
Okay, no, you don't have
for
to
not
laugh
laughing
at
his
finished
cheesy jokes. All right. I'm just impressed that she likes to go clubbing at 36.
Yes. Oh, at 36. That's
Yeah,
funny.
'cause I'm
Because you think
35.
that's old for it to go clubbing.
For clubbing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 36 is old to go clubbing. Like, I'm not hating on her, I'm impressed. I can't imagine at 35 wanting to be at a club. I like to dance, but I like to dance in air, like I like open spaces.
Okay,
I don't want people like crammed near me. I don't want bottle service. I don't want any of that.
So you're finished with clubbing.
I'm finished with that. I've been finished.
Okay, so look, the reason why it's complicated is, as the prime minister, yes, when your foreign minister tests positive, you probably should take a couple more precautions, and you probably should have your phone, business phone on you, because of that. Not every single time. Actually, when you're prime minister, you probably should have your business phone on you all the time, right? It sucks, but it's true.
You should, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree.
And so, on the other hand, how awesome is it that their prime minister is actually fun and doesn't hate, it just works for the donors and right? And she's out clubbing till 4 a.m. I love her.
Not just that, they're doing way better in responding to COVID than we are. Far less deaths than the United States.
TYT.com/polls. You be the judge, but I say let her go. Okay, guys. Power Hour with Nina Turner is next. One of the things we do is what would Nina do, and in this case, I'm going to ask her. Biden is now losing to Trump in polling. What would you do to turn around? But not if you were Biden, that's actually relatively easy. If you were Biden's chief of staff, how do you get the guy to actually fight back against Republicans? Super interesting question. Members, you get to watch that next. TYT.com/join, or if you're watching on YouTube, you just hit the join button below. We'll see you there.
You know, old school's to me from Jank. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben.
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, sir, would you like to rethink that? And I go, what are you talking about?
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps fucking cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
If you're looking for a heart attack, the short way, baby.
Wrong. I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times.
Yuck. But what makes you stop right before 40? You know, what makes you say, nah, man, I ain't doing that no more. I'm cool.
And I called you back on the air. And I was like, okay, Kevin Smith, big shot. What the you said you'd come on and you didn't come on.
I'm sure I took that very well.
Yeah, you did. You called me back the next day and said, I thought it was 7 a.m. There's now deep fake porn. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
I heard of it. I just had some in the car.
I'll tell you who I'm not Ben Mankiewicz. Have you guys ever felt that?
Not ever.
And now it's just the three of us.
This is the intimate hour.
By the way, the last half hour of this, we're not even rolling.
Fair enough.
Kingsley.
See, I watch movies.
I'm done with both of you.
Once Greg starts laughing, I can't stop. And I was just gonna ask you about getting high. Snoogans?
Snoochie Boochies.
And members, of course, you can get the whole damn thing. TYT.com, join, and free trial. I'm old school with the old folks.
John, come back!